I want to tell you guys about a little red crystal swan. The Friday before Mother's Day, my daughter-in-law Christy asked me to go with her to go visit a psychic medium in Winter Park. She wanted to connect with my son Jeremy and her brother Carlos. I said yes. What I didn't know was that before we even arrived, Tracy Olsen had felt spiritually compelled to rush to an antique shop right down from her place and purchase a little red swan. She didn't know why. She just knew she needed to. When we sat down, Tracy held the swan and said, "You'll know who this is for." And then she described a short, spunky old woman full of personality, a woman who danced in the 1920s. I completely broke open because when I was 6 years old, just before leaving Spain to come to America, my grandmother took me to a park in Asturias, a park filled with peacocks and swans. A woman there had a red swan. I loved it, and I begged my grandmother to get it, so she did. And she got that swan, and she put it in her kitchen table. The swan sat in that table for years. Nobody knew that story, not even my own family. I had totally forgotten about it. Guys, there is no logic explanation for what happened in that room. And today, Tracy is my guest, and I'm privileged to have her here. So hello, my beautiful sunblazers and heroes. Welcome to the Rosie Lastra Podcast, sponsored by Jeremy's Unity Flight LLC. I am your host, Rosie Lastra, angel mom, transformational coach, student of both faith and science, and someone who has learned that grief doesn't just break your heart. It changes how you see yourself entirely in this world. Folks, you belong here. This community was built for you. This podcast exists because of what I lived and because of what I know is possible on the other side of the worst thing that could ever happen to you. When cancer took my son Jeremy, it took my identity with him. I didn't just lose a child, I lost myself as well. After 8 months of massive grief and almost 100 pounds gained, one dream changed everything. I rebuilt my life from the inside out, using faith, science, and a structured path to purpose. And now I help parents who lost a child to cancer or illness reconstruct their identity and step into their calling. Because your story didn't end with your child's last breath, and neither did you. That is what we do here. That is what we are doing today. Today's episode is for every parent who has felt their child reach back, for each person who has been a butterfly at exactly the right moment, for everyone who has had a dream that felt more real than waking life, for everyone who has wondered, is love strong enough to survive death? My guest today has dedicated her life to answer that question. Tracy Olsen is a UK-trained, validated, evidential physic medium and detective, a wife, mother, grandmother, cancer survivor, former Sunday school teacher, an ordained priestess. Her primary studio is in Winter Park, Florida. My family and I personally visited her at her place, and I will carry this visit for the rest of my life. Let me bring her on. I am so privileged to have her here. Hi, Tracy. How are you doing, beautiful? God bless you. How you doing?
God bless you. So lovely to see you. Thank you for sharing our experience with your audience and bringing light and joy.
I thank you, thank you, thank you. Sweetheart, I've explained to our Assemblation of Heroes a little bit about you. But before I start my episodes, I do like to regulate my people. So guys, what I like everybody to do right now at this present time is go ahead and cross your arms and hug yourself. Okay. That is a way of you, and know you are loved. Know you are special. Know your loved one is with you, and they're giving you a hug right this minute. And breathe in through the nose and slowly out through your mouth. Do it one more time. In through your nose and slowly out through your mouth. You could relax and bring your hands down. Okay. Thank you, folks, for being here. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here. And I so value that. Okay. Know that you're not broken. Know that you are becoming. Okay. So, Tracy, before we talk about anything else, I'd like you to tell our audience a little more about you, my love. Explain to them your journey and your story.
Well, in short, I'm your typical girl next door. I was a type A achiever, grew up in Central Florida. I was a high school teacher, Sunday school teacher, and raised our children. I also had some different careers, things that allowed me to be of service. But when I sold my last company and I became an empty nester, my husband and I, we just had so much more time on our hands. So with no urgent callings, no children to take care of, no job to go to, no more company to run, I just kind of stewed in the silence. And what's fascinating is when the noise turned down, my intuition turned up. And I realized my entire life, I received specific images, messages, and positive inspirations from the other side. I call it the other side, but it includes guardian angels, spirit guides, and loved ones who have crossed over. And I immediately went for formal training. I realized after a few years of keeping a journal, these weren't just random ideas. These were verifiable images and stories I was receiving. And it's been the most remarkable, humbling work I could ever imagine. It's just been an honor to serve spirit, God, goddess, as others can best receive the medicine and connection.
Amazing, Tracy. I hear you, girl. And it's like I tell people, you could call, I mean, we got multiple names, so why can't he, right? So I love that. I love that. And yes, and it's funny how when you allow yourself to quiet down and let the noise down, how things come up that you never imagined before. Tracy, you mentioned that you went through a phase of cancer, and you call that the cancer inciting event. Is that what you call it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Explain to us why and what was that all about?
I'm so glad you asked, because my cancer was melanoma, and people think, oh, skin cancer. Well, melanoma, it penetrates deep into the bloodstream quickly, and it's the most fatal skin cancer. Fortunately, one day when I was shaving my legs, I noticed a teeny tiny freckle. I mean, it was smaller than the head of a pin on the inside of my right knee. And it just struck me as odd. And this is before I had had my spiritual awakening. So I just thought, that's odd. I called the dermatologist and they said, we can't see you for 3 months. And I stayed on the line and I said, could you please just check the schedule one more time? Maybe there's an opening. And oh my goodness, she said, I just had a slot open up for tomorrow at 10 a.m. I said, I'll be there. So when I went to Dr. Jerry Johnson, who saved my life out of Maitland, Florida, she had a med student with her on rounds. And she took out the little eyeglass to look in at it. And she said, all right, here's an example. This is your classic ABCD. This looks like melanoma, but we have to take a test and send it off to the lab. So I was diagnosed 11 Easters ago with stage 1A. And I went back, I want to say 5 days later, and my husband was with me to support, but she removed this much flesh, like the size of a baseball, from my inner right knee. And I have a beautiful scar that reminds me every day after that, I've been on borrowed time.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful, girl. That's Tracy. Oh, thank you, Jesus. But they say things happen for a reason, and we learn to appreciate when things like that happen. So God bless you, girl.
Well, thank you. And on that note, I do want to share that I was a real busy, active person, and I didn't know how to work when I couldn't move my leg with stitches and recovery. So a friend suggested I go to yoga and start meditating. And that was the first time I experienced what it was like to not be busy and talking all the time. So that really helped set me on my new path.
Yeah, sometimes God slows us down, don't he?
Yeah.
And he says, you gotta do what you gotta do. So let me ask you, Tracy. I love that you also mentioned that you keep a journal because.
Yes.
I'm curious. You look for patterns, correct?
Yes, I look for patterns and how spirit communicates with me, and it just becomes, it's like learning a new language. So the more I practice, the more I trust, the more I can understand what loved ones on the other side are sharing.
Okay, gotcha. So I got to ask this, Tracy. When this all first started within you, were you thinking you were going crazy? I mean, what was your thoughts? What were your thoughts in your mind? What was it going? What was it like?
Well, strangely, it felt like remembering one of my favorite activities as a little kid. I like to think about, as an adult, when you see a rainstorm, you're like, oh, I have to have the umbrella. I can't go out. What a pain. But if you think about it, there was a time when you were a little kid when you would love the rain because that meant you could go splash in the puddles. So when all these dreams were coming through, and then I was able to validate that they were true messages from those who had passed, I just remembered, like, wait a minute, this has happened my whole life. And I just never thought to tell anyone because to me, it was normal. You know, I don't go around asking people, can you see the color blue?
Right.
Or can you smell that scent? I just assumed everyone had the gift. But then it quickly explained why I always knew what my students in high school were doing behind me without me looking. I always knew which students were in crisis at home. I would warn my sons. I would say, if you jump your bike this way, you know, you're going to wreck, or something to that effect. So it's always been there as an undercurrent. Most importantly, my whole body lit up the moment I saw my husband, and I knew he was the one for me.
Wow.
I couldn't, of course, tell him. It would have terrified him, but we've been together for decades, and I'm so appreciative that I listened to my intuition then.
That's amazing. Yes, folks, we need to learn to listen to our intuition a little bit more. I've learned that myself, Tracy. So let me ask you, girl, there's something you teach that I want to pause on. Okay, you talk about energy, specifically the physics principle. The energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed.
Correct.
Walk us through what that means for the people we've lost.
All right. So in a scientific sense, the concept E=mc² is the equation that Einstein famously shared. It's the concept, or if you go back to physics, if you have one object moving and it hits another, like if you have a ball that hits a wall, the energy doesn't disappear, it dissipates into the wall. So the energy, there's a part of us, I like the Bible hymn, "Let My Little Light Shine." That little light inside of each of us is not part of our physical body. It's sheer love. And it lasts beyond our physical bodies. It can change form, it can change location, but just like physics has taught us in traditional science, energy, our vibrations, our human essence, our soul can never disappear.
Tracy, what I love about that too is that it's not just spiritual, it's also scientific. The same law that governs astrophysics is the same law that tells us our loved ones didn't simply disappear. You know, they've just transformed. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So and it's become a little more discussed with string theory, where any two objects that have ever met are forever somehow impacting each other. And you can research that more through different podcasts, but in essence, at an atomic level, we're all related and we're all influencing each other, which is why it's so important to have positive thoughts, positive deeds, and positive people around you.
Most definitely. I hear you, girl. So let me ask you, you received one of the most dramatic validations through an international news story. Tell us about Sahar.
Oh, thank you so much for asking. I had been keeping my dream journal for about 1.5 years, and I had shared the information with my husband, but I hadn't yet told the rest of my family. So in October, after Hamas had kidnapped music festival goers, I started getting dreams. And one of the dreams I received, and I sketched her, I sketched a woman named Sarah Calderon. And then I received the information that she would be released the weekend after Thanksgiving. So our extended family was together for Thanksgiving. And I thought, I have to step into the light and share this gift with my family. So I brought my dream journal, I brought my sketches, and I shared with them. I said, Sarah Calderon is going to be released Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, one of these days after Thanksgiving. And every morning, as the news would show the names of the released hostages, we'd look, and then sure enough, there was Sahar Calderon. It was close. It wasn't exact, but my sketch matched her, and it was just remarkable. And that's when I knew I needed to share my gift with others and my experiences, because how many other people can relate? I didn't want them to be afraid. I wanted them to know this is a natural part of our fabric as spiritual creatures.
Okay, here's another thing I want to bring up, and I love that. Yeah, that girl, that's got to be intuition. That is not coincidence. I hear you. And there's something else that is just beyond belief, and that I personally experienced. Okay, like I mentioned, this red swan. Okay, now when I came to visit you, you actually held a red swan in your hand, and it totally. And you mentioned, and my grandmother was a short, spunky, very high energy woman. Okay, amazing woman. And you described her to the T. I mean, and what's guys, let me show you guys something. Let me bring this on real quick because I need to show you this. This is the swan that Tracy bought for me, okay, and held in her hand. And this here was the swan that my grandmother had in her kitchen table. Now, her swan was smaller, but it was a smaller version of basically the same thing. What blew my mind is that I had forgotten that story. I was literally 7 years old. It was right before I came to the U.S. And my grandmother takes me to a park in Gijón, Asturias, where I'm from. Let me take this off. Where I'm from. And there was this woman that had these swans, and I fell in love with it. And my grandmother went ahead and bought it and brought it home. What's credible is that nobody in my family really knew that story. But after that whole incident with you, when I talked to my brother recently, I called him up. I said, Alex, I said, you wouldn't believe this. And I explained to him everything that had happened. He turned around and he says, oh, wow. So that was that red swan that grandma had on her kitchen table. He's like, I remember seeing it the last time I was there. I had no clue that was the story behind it. Mm-hmm. So that was, and can you give us a little insight? What drew you to do that, and where did that come to you from?
This is one of my favorite things to share. So typically in this life, we push. We try to make our own way. But to be a truly valuable psychic medium, I have to receive. I have to turn off my logical brain and just be open to receiving. So it's the opposite of pushing. And a gentleman had scheduled an appointment the night before for Mother's Day. And that morning, I awoke with this image of a red glass swan and the clear direction I needed to get it. And I saw the direction coming from a woman who showed herself as your grandmother. And it wasn't relevant for the first reading, and I knew that. The second reading, no. But on my lunch break, I'm like, I can't go eat. I have to go find this red swan. So I went to the local antique shop. I call it my honeypot, and Orange Tree Antiques in Winter Park, Florida. And it's a massive shop. But I walked in and kind of frantically, because I was on a time crunch, I asked the folks that worked there, and I said, where's the red glass swan? And they said, well, ma'am, where did you see it? And I said, well, it's about 6 feet off the ground. I said, oh, I forgot. I'm a psychic medium. I haven't actually seen it, but sometimes your team helps me because I receive information of items that's hidden under tables, and the staff usually helps me find things, but I was on my own. Fortunately, Spirit was very clear, so I went to the back, found the red swan, they wrapped it up. And my favorite part is that when the gentleman who scheduled the reading stepped in with his wife, so that's 2 people, I was expecting 1 reading, and then I saw you, and you were very hesitant. You were just there, you were silent, quiet as a church mouse, you sat back in the corner, and I knew all the information was from you, so I had to discreetly try to figure out how to invite you in. And I'm so glad you graciously approved. And I unwrapped the swan. I knew it was specifically for you. And your grandmother was kind of in my ear sharing the details. So I'm just so grateful you were open to sharing in the experience.
And here's the thing about it. It was my son's Mother's Day present to my daughter-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to make it about her. So I came there as a witness, because she asked me to be there, not because I thought I was going to get a reading. So it was kind of like, yeah. And she did want my son Jeremy to show up, and oh my God, did he. So, and here's the other thing that took place in that whole session with you. You at one point in time, you mentioned that Jeremy was in the room. You were telling us things. You were explaining him. It was to the T, and you asked me if I had any questions for him. And my response, and I did. The night before, I had actually written 3 questions I had for him, in case he showed up.
Yes.
And I had journaled them. But because at that point in time we hadn't even talked about Christy, I mentioned to you, let's hold off on that. And let's go ahead and focus on Christy for now. We'll come back to that. Now, what blew my mind is, yes, you went to Christy. You brought up you spoke to her about her father and her brother, and Jeremy kept hopping in and out of the room. But along the way, before the session was through, you looked dead at me and you told me that Jeremy was wanting to say something to me. And you literally gave me all 3 answers without me saying a word. You answered all 3, and I had journaled them. That's why, like I explained to you, my son was he was not necessarily a believer, but after we came out of there, his response to me was, "Ma, there's something to this." What do you believe was happening at that moment? That
I want to be very clear. I am not saying any of the words or information. I am simply a conduit. I like to tell people I'm in communications. I receive information that's most important to people in the room. That's what they need to know. And it was just miraculous. You brought such an open heart and such love and a high vibration that enhances the experience. You just came in with such pure love. And I'm most grateful that, which is actually kind of typical, not because of me, but because I turn myself off that well. And just being comfortable sharing what comes through. And it's not easy. As I describe it to my husband and others, I think of preparing for a reading. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff and literally leaping, just hoping that the wind catches me. That's what it feels like every time. And I'm so grateful to Jeremy Turner Welch, another Jeremy, it must be in the name. And he's my mentor, and he works at the College of Psychic Studies in London. And you can't just start doing this sacred work without being formally trained, in my opinion, because we're held to high standards and you want to convey messages accurately and appropriately and with compassion.
I thank you for that, Tracy, because you're absolutely right. And if you're going to do something, you gotta stay as true. Yes, definitely. I love that about you, Tracy. And for grieving parents listening, I want to say this directly to you guys. Okay, I have seen butterflies following my family. I witnessed 10,000 reasons just playing on a phone, out of my cousin's phone, as my son was transitioning. I mean, I've witnessed us form a heart out of nothing until we noticed it in the picture. And what happened with that swan, the most personal, the most impossible to explain of all of them. So whether you come to this form from a faith background or a scientific background or both, I want to ask you something, Tracy. What would you say to the parent who desperately wants to a sign from their child, their child that they're still here, what would you say to them?
I would say, first of all, to allow the full grieving process. I'm not a licensed mental health counselor, but to join grief support groups, allow the process, and after 6 months or longer, when you're ready, to choose one of the favorite photos of your child, maybe their favorite perfume or cologne or toy, and a candle. And in the middle of the night, between 3 or 4 in the morning, because that's when our logical brain is most turned off, or first thing in the morning or right before you go to bed, when you're in that dreamlike state, light the candle with the intention of acknowledging the love that lasts forever, the eternal bond that you share with your child, and ask for a sign. It doesn't have to be specific. And then send your love to them, blow out the candle, go back to sleep, and effortlessly, you'll notice a sign. And it'll feel almost unreal. And then you might catch yourself and say, oh, wait, that was just my child's favorite type of dog that just appeared out front and sat down for a pet. Or I never noticed that bird before. It's not typically in these parts. Let me look up and see what that bird means as a sign. It might be a scent in the kitchen or a compulsion to make a certain meal, but the signs will come. What's important is to just enjoy your time coming from a place of love and acknowledging the grief process.
Most definitely. Someplace in the heroes, you hear that. Please acknowledge that grief process. Don't overlook it. And yes, Tracy, I agree. Community is so huge. It was my choice to reach out to my mentor, to the mentor I currently have, and be a part of his community. That helped tremendously in my coming out of grief. So Thank you for that. That is definitely super important. Tracy, going to the next question. You teach that every person, not just psychic mediums, but every person has access to intuition. That is divine birthright. Talk to us about that, because I think people need to hear about intuition, and I totally agree with you. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you for asking. And I approach this as what I call a wise woman. I'm over 55. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. And there are certain things that are absolutes. So let me give you a specific example of intuition. With animals, oftentimes before the tsunami hits, before a hurricane, you'll hear that the animals run to higher ground. Well, how do they know to do that? They don't talk. They don't have the weatherman or weatherwoman coming in to give them the news. They just somehow know. Folks that are hunters or folks that have served in the military often describe that if you're in the forest and it's full of noise from the animals and the forest goes silent, you have 7 seconds to seek cover before something occurs. So this intuition, this survival skill, is baked into our physical 3D, our bodies. And many times women have felt it. That's the reason we don't get on an elevator. We just sense danger. Or the reason men decide to turn left when they're driving instead of turning right, because they sense danger. It's our divine birthright because it's literally our sixth sense. It's our ability to sense all the unknowns, all the energies, but that was very difficult to control. So I like to think of it this way. In ancient times, let's say go back before 6,000 years ago, when people were in small villages or tribes, women received information. They were the Sophia, the wisdom, and the men were the action. So together, it kind of worked. The women would gather, they'd receive information through their intuition about where to plant crops, when to plant crops, things of this nature. But then, as the populations grew and we became hunter-gatherers and grew into larger cities, how in the world could you possibly run an organization if everyone is using their own intuition instead of a central authority to streamline efficiency? And it's my belief in studying history and other avenues that this is where intuition became kind of frowned upon, because instead of looking inward and trusting our divine connection of pure love and light with God, Goddess, or the universe and spirit, it became we're to look outwards to an individual human leader, however that looks.
Gotcha. I hear you, girl. As a Christian, Tracy, actually, one of my reverends mentioned that prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening to God. And what I hear you say is that most of us have forgotten how to listen, correct?
Correct.
We've become busy, distracted, and overwhelmed by grief, that we stop hearing those gentle nudges. I'm saying that correctly, right?
Yes.
Okay, so and maybe grief does something unexpected. Maybe grief breaks us open enough to hear things we can't hear before. So what I'd like to go into, Tracy, something I find so powerful about your story is that your transformation was not optional. The cancer forced you to stop. And
correct.
in that stopping, everything was revealed, right?
Yes.
Okay, for me, it was Jeremy's cancer. So, do you believe our greatest pain often reveals the greatest purpose?
It often does. And I just want to take pause. I have never experienced the grief you and others have experienced. I have relatives who have, I have close friends who have, but my grief of dodging death from melanoma is by no way means the same as what you and others have experienced. But absolutely, I do like to approach life as when one chapter ends or when you seem you're at the depths of despair, that's often when you can rebuild and receive your true life's calling. And it's usually in service to others.
I hear you. Thanks for that, Tracy. I appreciate that so much. That response is so deep because I often tell grieving parents I would give everything that's happened with Jeremy. Since Jeremy, I would give everything back if I could have him back for a second. So you're right. It's difficult to not people that haven't gone through child loss are not able to identify with it. I've never experienced pain like this. So every single thing I've built since Jeremy passed, I give it all back. To have, you just have them here. But I can't choose what happened. All I can choose how I react to it. And that's why I've been building what I've been building. So in those moments, we just gotta focus more on that connection, because I believe that that's part of what brings the purpose. Okay. So now, if Tracy, your story didn't end. I want to tell our listeners that their story didn't end with their child's last breath, and neither did. And from everything I've spoken to you and after meeting with you, I've realized they're with us more than people realize. Okay. What would you say tonight to a grieving parent who feels completely disconnected uh, from their identity and their identity collapse, and they feel that their child is, there was no sense into why their child passed, and uh, they're wondering how to find joy again? What would you say to them?
I would encourage them to lean into their faith, whatever that looks like, because the pain that they're feeling is too big for them to hold. It's too big for a congregation to hold. It's too big for other humans and friends to hold. It has to be given back to a greater power. And to connect with that faith, however best serves them. To look out to the stars, to walk barefoot in the grass, to allow the grief to move through them and to find their faith. That's probably the only way to truly let it move through them.
And yes, one of the things I talk about a lot, and I found, is that our bodies, our signals go actually from the body to the brain, and not the brain to the body. So by what you're talking about, it kind of removes the grief and the pain, and allows us to get more grounded. And yes, most definitely. So Tracy, I also want to share something with our audience, because every guest in the Rosie Lastra Podcast receives a personalized destiny blueprint from me, and it's a faith and numerology document that I created, including your biological name, your life path, and your spiritual gifts, as well as your, includes your birth date. I want to share a few things from yours. I want to share a few things about it. Can you tell our audience what you thought of the one I shared with you?
I thought it was unbelievably relevant, and so much of what was shared are simply phrases that other people have said. But it's interesting that it said I was destined to be a teacher, a leader, sharing my experiences with others. Well, I've always been a teacher and a leader. And it came up with other examples about being aligned with the sun, things of that nature. And the presentation was beautiful. And I really liked that somehow, I don't know how you did it, that you were able to combine many different ways of interpreting my birth date, my name, and it was very positive. It was an honor to receive that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, my love. And folks, if you want your own destiny blueprint, reach out to me. Write down blueprint on an email post, or go to jeremy'sunityflight.com and do a one-to-one with Rosie, and I'll definitely get back to you. Also, I do want to let you guys know that tonight's conversation resonated with you, if you've been wondering, how do I move forward? How do I rebuild after loss? How do I honor my child while still living my life? I want to personally invite you to the Soldier's Directive. It's my free life masterclass where I walk you through the exact framework I used to move from grief and identity collapse into purpose and mission. Comment directive on any of my special social media posts, or visit jeremy'sunityflight.com/masterclass. I would be honored to walk beside you, folks. Okay. Now, Tracy, one last question, and I ask this of every guest. Do you know anyone in your world that lost a child, or is surviving child loss but not yet living? Someone who needs what we do here. I have a few spots open in my private coaching intensive, and I would love to connect with them. So if you've got anybody, you're more than welcome to share with us. Fair
Thank you
enough?
so much. Yes.
Okay. So Tracy, thank you very much for being here. God bless you. And I finish off with a prayer. So folks, please receive this. Father God, we come before you tonight with hearts full of gratitude for every person who found their way to this conversation, for every mother, every father, every grandparent, every family carrying love that continues beyond loss. Lord, some of the people listening tonight have been waiting for a sign, waiting for confirmation that their child is still near, waiting for someone to tell them you are not crazy. You are not imagining it. Love is still present. Father, I pray you meet them right now, exactly where they are, in the quiet and the grief, in the questions they carry alone. Wrap them in your peace. Remind them they are loved. Remind them they are not forgotten. Remind them they are not broken. They are becoming. For every Jeremy, every child whose love continues to reach through the veil, may their families feel that love today. And Lord, for every grieving parent who is surviving but not yet living, give them the courage to take the next step. Give them the hope for the morning, and remind them that you are not finished. Not with this story, not with their purpose, not with their life. In Jesus' name, amen. Tracy, before I let you go, my love, can you tell our viewers how they could reach you? They want to connect with you, my love.
Yes. The best way to reach out to me is simply to look up my website, which is my name, Tracy Olsen, Olsen, tracyolsen.com. You can find me under Psychic Medium Tracy Olsen on social media platforms, and I'm here to serve. Thank you so much, Rosie, for helping us raise the vibe.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, my love, for being here. It's been amazing. My beautiful sunblazers and heroes, remember the red swan. A woman in Asturias, Spain, who loved a crystal swan, a memory buried for decades, and a gift held out by a stranger that reached across time. Remember the 3 questions, written in the dark, never spoken out loud, answered anyway. Love does not forget. Love does not end when heartbreak stops, and love will find a way to reach you. No matter what your grief is telling you today, your story is not over. Your purpose is not over. Your child's legacy is not over. And you are certainly not over. Because here's what I know to be true. What this podcast, this mission, and this community is built on. When cancer took my son Jeremy, it took my identity with him. I didn't just lose a child, I lost myself. After 8 months of grief and almost 100 pounds gained, and a dream changed everything. Now I help parents who lost a child to cancer or illness reconstruct their identity and step into their calling. Because your story didn't end with your child's last breath, and neither did you. If this episode touched your heart, share it. Send it to another grieving parent. Leave a review. Help us reach someone who needs hope today. Comment Jeremy on any of my posts, and I'll send you this episode link. Comment Directive, and I'll send you details on the Soldier's Directive Masterclass. And connect if you believe love never truly leaves. Until next time, folks, I love you. Jeremy loves you. God loves you. Keep flying. God bless. See you next time.